The first time I saw him was through a haze of steam from the industrial dishwasher. My hands were red and chapped, my uniform damp with sweat as I worked the late shift at the Sovereign, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, a place where people like me served people like him. I hadn't meant to look up. 6 months into this job, I'd learned to keep my gaze down, to become invisible. The wealthy patrons preferred their service staff to be ghosts, present when needed, absent when not. But the sudden hush that fell over the kitchen made me glance toward the door that connected to the private dining rooms. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the amber lighting from the dining area. Tall and imposing, he wore a charcoal suit that looked like it cost more than my yearly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place. But it was his eyes that caught me, intense, calculating, the color of whiskey held up to firelight. Mr. Castellano, our manager, Roberts, practically bowed as he approached. "Is everything to your satisfaction?" Castellano. The name rippled through me like a warning. Everyone in this city knew that name, whispered it with fear or respect, or both. Dominic Castellano controlled everything from the docks to the mayor's office. The legitimate businesses were just the surface. Beneath them ran a current of darker enterprises. I quickly looked back down at the dishes I was loading, hoping he hadn't noticed me staring. The last thing I needed was to attract the attention of someone like him. "The service is slow." His voice was quiet, oddly gentle for a man rumored to have ordered deaths with nothing more than a slight nod. "And the wine isn't what I requested." "Sir, I'm terribly sorry. I'll replace it immediately and speak to the staff." "See that you do." I kept my head down, focusing on my task even as I felt the weight of someone's gaze. A chill crept up my spine, the primal sense of being watched. When I dared another glance, his eyes were fixed directly on me. Our gazes locked for just a second, but it was enough. I dropped the plate I was holding, sending it crashing to the floor. The sound shattered the tension, and everyone in the kitchen froze. I'm sorry," I stammered, dropping to my knees to gather the broken pieces. "That's coming out of your pay, Elena," Roberts hissed as he hurried back into the kitchen, his face flushed with anger. "It was an accident," I whispered, but no one was listening. As I carefully picked up the shards, I cut my finger on a jagged edge. A drop of crimson bloomed against my skin, and I bit my lip to keep from crying out. "You." The deep voice made me jump. I looked up to find Castellano standing over me, his security detail hovering by the door. How had he moved so quickly, so silently? "Sir?" My voice trembled. "You're injured." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway, clutching my bleeding finger. To my shock, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp handkerchief. He crouched down, a move that seemed impossible for a man in such an expensive suit, and wrapped the fine linen around my finger. His hands were warm, strong, with a network of thin scars across the knuckles. Hands that had fought, hurt, perhaps killed. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice so low that only I could hear it. "Elena," I whispered. "Elena Reyes." Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, interest, I couldn't tell. He tied the handkerchief with practiced ease, his fingers lingering against my pulse point. "Elena," he repeated, as if tasting my name. "Be more careful." Then he was gone, striding back through the door while his security scrambled to keep up. I remained kneeling on the floor, my pulse racing beneath the expensive fabric he'd left wrapped around my finger. "What the hell was that?" Roberts demanded, yanking me to my feet. "Why would Mr. Castellano speak to you?" "I don't know," I answered honestly, still staring at the door. I didn't tell Roberts about the note I found tucked into the handkerchief when I unwrapped it later that night. A phone number, followed by 3 words that made my blood run cold. "I found you." 3 days passed, and I tried to convince myself it had been nothing. A strange encounter, perhaps even a veiled threat, though for what, I couldn't imagine. I'd never had any connection to Castellano or his organization. I was nobody, invisible. The cut on my finger healed, but I kept the handkerchief, tucked between the pages of the battered copy of Jane Eyre on my nightstand. Sometimes at night, I'd take it out, run my fingers over the embroidered initials, DC, and wonder what he'd meant. I hadn't called the number. What would I even say? Besides, associating with someone like Dominic Castellano could only lead to trouble. My tiny apartment felt smaller than usual that evening as rain lashed against the windows. The building's heating system had broken again, leaving me huddled under blankets, a cup of tea warming my hands as I tried to study for the nursing exam I was scheduled to take in a month. This job at the Sovereign was just temporary, a means to an end. One day, I'd be the one helping others, not serving them overpriced meals. A knock at my door startled me. No one ever visited me here, in this run-down building at the edge of the city. I set down my tea and approached cautiously. "Who is it?" I called, my hand hovering over the chain lock. "Delivery for Elena Reyes," a gruff voice answered. I frowned. I hadn't ordered anything, and it was nearly 10 p.m., far too late for regular deliveries. "I think you have the wrong apartment," I said. "Apartment 4B, Elena Reyes. I need a signature." Against my better judgment, I opened the door a crack, keeping the chain engaged. A man in a delivery uniform stood there, holding a large box. "I didn't order anything," I insisted. "It's already paid for, ma'am. I just need you to sign." Curiosity won out. I closed the door, undid the chain, and opened it again to accept the electronic signature pad he thrust toward me. As I signed, I noticed a sleek black car idling at the curb outside my building, its windows tinted so dark they looked like slices of midnight. The delivery man handed me the box and left without another word. I locked the door quickly behind him, my heart pounding as I set the package on my kitchen counter. It was beautifully wrapped in silver paper with a black satin ribbon. Far too elegant to be anything I would have ordered. With trembling fingers, I untied the ribbon and carefully removed the wrapping. Inside was a box from Fontaine's, the most exclusive clothing store in the city, a place I'd never even dared to enter. I lifted the lid to find a dress, a deep burgundy color that shimmered under my apartment's harsh lighting. The fabric was softer than anything I'd ever touched, flowing like water between my fingers. Beneath it lay a pair of matching shoes, a small clutch purse, and a velvet jewelry box containing a delicate silver necklace with a teardrop ruby pendant. A small cream-colored card sat at the bottom of the box. The handwriting was bold, confident strokes. "Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. A car will be waiting. DC." My first instinct was to refuse, to pack everything back in the box and leave it outside my door. But as I ran my fingers over the dress again, I found myself wondering what it would feel like to wear something so beautiful. Just once. A second knock made me jump. This time when I looked through the peephole, there was no one there. Only a small envelope on the floor. I opened the door cautiously and retrieved it. Inside was a photograph, old, its edges worn. A family portrait. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the faces. My parents, much younger, with me as a toddler on my mother's lap. And standing beside them, his arm around my father's shoulder, was a younger version of Dominic Castellano. On the back, written in fading ink, "The Reyes and Castellano families, 1998. My hands shook so badly I had to sit down. This made no sense. My father had been a construction worker, my mother a housekeeper. They died in a car accident when I was 7, leaving me to bounce between distant relatives and foster homes. They'd never mentioned knowing anyone powerful or wealthy, let alone a man like Castellano. I stayed up all night, the photograph in one hand, the handkerchief in the other, trying to piece together a puzzle with too many missing parts. By morning, exhaustion had made my decision for me. I would go. I would meet him. I needed answers about my parents, about why he'd said "I found you." The next day passed in a blur of anxiety and preparation. I showered carefully, dried my hair until it fell in soft waves past my shoulders, applied the little makeup I owned with more care than usual. When I finally slipped the dress over my head, I hardly recognized the woman in my small bathroom mirror. The fabric embraced my curves, the color making my olive skin glow and bringing out amber highlights in my brown eyes. At precisely 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The car is waiting." I took one last look at my apartment, tucked the old photograph into my new clutch purse, and stepped out into the night. The same black car from the previous evening was parked at the curb, its engine purring softly. The driver emerged as I approached, opening the rear door with a slight bow. "Ms. Reyes," he said. Not a question. The interior was all black leather and soft lighting, empty, except for a single red rose on the seat. As I settled in, I caught a faint scent. Sandalwood and something else. Spicier, more dangerous. His scent, lingering from an earlier journey. The car pulled away from my building, carrying me toward whatever Dominic Castellano had planned. Toward answers, I hoped. Or perhaps toward something far more dangerous than questions. In the darkness of the back seat, I fingered the ruby pendant at my throat and whispered a silent prayer that I wasn't making the biggest mistake of my life. The car wound through the city streets, passing through neighborhoods that grew increasingly elegant. Wrought iron gates gave way to manicured hedges and sprawling estates. We finally stopped before a mansion set back from the road, its limestone facade glowing amber in the carefully positioned landscape lighting. "We've arrived, Ms. Reyes," the driver announced, opening my door. I stepped out, my borrowed heels sinking slightly into the gravel driveway. The mansion loomed above me, windows blazing with warm light. This wasn't a restaurant or public venue as I'd expected. This was his home. A wave of panic washed over me. I'd walked straight into the lion's den, wearing a dress he'd provided, arriving in his car. I was completely at his mercy. The massive front door opened before I reached it. A woman in a crisp black uniform offered a practiced smile. "Ms. Reyes, we've been expecting you. Please come in." The foyer was cavernous, with a sweeping staircase and marble floors that echoed with my hesitant steps. Original artwork hung on the walls. Not the reproductions you'd find in upscale hotels, but genuine masterpieces. Security cameras tracked my movements from discreet corners. "This way, please," the woman said, leading me through the house. We passed rooms filled with antique furniture, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a sitting room where a fire crackled in a stone hearth. No one else was visible, but I felt the presence of others. Security personnel watching from shadows, staff moving silently behind closed doors. Finally, we reached a set of double doors at the rear of the house. The woman knocked once, then opened them without waiting for a response. "Ms. Reyes has arrived, sir." The room beyond was a conservatory, with glass walls and ceiling revealing the night sky above. Tropical plants created a lush interior garden, and the air was warm and heavy with the scent of blooming flowers. A small table had been set for two, crystal and silver gleaming in the soft lighting, and there he was, standing with his back to me, looking out at the darkened gardens beyond the glass. Dominic Castellano turned slowly, his eyes finding mine with unsettling precision. "Elena," he said, my name in his mouth sounding like something precious and rare. "You came." He wore another impeccable suit, this one a deep navy that made his broad shoulders look even more imposing. A gold watch glinted at his wrist, the only adornment besides a signet ring on his right hand. "You didn't give me much choice," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. I held up the photograph I'd brought. "You owe me an explanation." A hint of approval flickered in his eyes. He gestured toward the table. "Please sit. We'll talk over dinner." A server materialized from somewhere, pulling out my chair. Another appeared with wine, pouring a rich red liquid into delicate glasses. I remained standing. "I want answers now," I insisted, though my voice trembled slightly. "Who were you to my parents? Why do you have this picture? What did you mean when you wrote, 'I found you'?" He studied me for a long moment. "Courage," he murmured, almost to himself. "Just like your father." He moved toward me, each step measured and deliberate. "We'll discuss everything, Elena. You have my word. But first, let's enjoy a meal together. It's been a very long time since I've had the pleasure of your company." "We've never met before the restaurant," I said, confused. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, almost approachable. "We have. You were very young. You wouldn't remember." Something in his manner made me relent. I sat, arranging the burgundy dress carefully around me. As I did, I noticed a thin, barely visible scar running along his jawline, disappearing beneath his collar. A knife wound, perhaps, a reminder of the violent world he inhabited. "The dress suits you," he said, taking his own seat. I hoped it would. "How did you know my size?" I asked, accepting the wine I didn't particularly want. "I know many things about you, Elena. I've been keeping track for years." A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of the conservatory. "That's disturbing." "Is it? Or is it reassurance that someone has been watching over you? That you were never truly alone?" Before I could respond, the first course arrived, delicate plates of food that looked more like art than sustenance. I recognized the chef's work from the Sovereign, though this was far more elaborate than anything we served to even our most prestigious guests. "You must have questions," Dominic said, watching me over the rim of his wineglass. "Dozens," I admitted. "Starting with why a man like you would be interested in someone like me." "A man like me?" He raised an eyebrow. "And what kind of man do you think I am, Elena?" I hesitated, weighing my words carefully. "Dangerous, powerful, someone who takes what he wants. All true," he acknowledged without a trace of shame. "But incomplete." He set down his glass and leaned forward slightly. "Your father was my friend, my best friend, from when we were boys. We grew up together in the old neighborhood." I stared at him in disbelief. "My father was a construction worker. Before that, he was much more." Dominic's expression softened with memory. "Marco Reyes was like a brother to me. We started with nothing, built something together. He was brilliant, fearless." His eyes refocused on me. "You have his eyes. Did you know that?" "The same determination. What happened?" I asked, barely able to breathe. No one had spoken to me about my father with such intimacy in years. "We had a disagreement about the direction our business was taking." Dominic's voice hardened. "I wanted to expand into new territories. Your father wanted to leave, to give you and your mother a normal life. We argued, said things we couldn't take back." The realization dawned slowly, horror spreading through me like ice water. "My father worked for you, in your organization." Dominic nodded once. "He didn't just work for me. We were partners, equals, in the beginning." "He was a criminal," I whispered, my world tilting sideways. "He was a man who did what was necessary to protect his family," Dominic corrected, his tone gentle but firm. "The world isn't as black and white as you might believe, Elena." I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. "And the accident? The car crash that killed my parents? Was that really an accident?" Pain flashed across his face, genuine and raw. "Yes. I may operate outside the law, but I would never harm Marco or Isabella. Never." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small leather-bound book. "Your father's journal. He kept it the last year of his life. Read it, and you'll understand." I stared at the book but didn't take it. "Why now? Why find me after all these years?" He placed the journal on the table between us. "Because I made a promise to your father, that if anything happened to him I would look after you, protect you." "You've done a terrible job," I said bitterly, thinking of the years of poverty, of bouncing between uncaring relatives and worse foster homes. "Where were you when I needed someone?" "Watching, waiting until you were old enough to understand." His eyes darkened. "And dealing with those who failed you. The foster father who raised his hand to you when you were 15. He had an unfortunate accident the next day." "The scholarship that mysteriously appeared when you started community college? The apartment that somehow had below-market rent? The jobs that always materialized when you needed them most?" My mind raced, connecting dots I'd never seen before. Small mercies I'd attributed to luck or coincidence. "You've been manipulating my life," I accused, anger flaring. "Guiding it," he corrected. "From a distance, as Marco would have wanted. And now? Why reveal yourself now?" Dominic's expression changed, becoming more guarded. "Because you're in danger." I laughed, the sound sharp and hollow in the lush surroundings. "From who?" "You're the most dangerous person I know." "Not from me. Never from me." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Your father had enemies, Powerful people who thought he took something that belonged to them before he died. They've discovered he had a daughter. What could I possibly have that anyone would want? I asked. Information. Access to accounts. Keys to storage locations. They believe Marco would have entrusted these things to you. Perhaps without you even knowing. I shook my head in disbelief. That's insane. My father was just... I stopped, no longer sure of anything about the man who had raised me. 3 days ago, someone broke into the records at your former foster agency, Dominic continued. Yesterday, a man was asking questions about you at the Sovereign. That's why I had to move quickly, to get to you first. Fear crawled up my spine. You could be making this all up, creating a threat, so I'll, what? Trust you? Depend on you? His expression hardened. I don't need to manufacture dangers to earn your trust, Elena. Reality is quite dangerous enough. He stood abruptly. Come with me. There's something you need to see. Against my better judgment, I followed him through the conservatory doors into the garden beyond. The night air was cool after the tropical warmth inside, and I shivered in my thin dress. Without a word, Dominic removed his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. His scent, sandalwood, spice, and something uniquely him, enveloped me. We walked along a stone path, security personnel materializing and fading back into the shadows as we passed. Finally, we reached what appeared to be a guest house, set apart from the main building. Dominic entered a code on a keypad, and the door swung open. Inside was nothing like I expected, not luxurious accommodations, but a high-tech security center. Monitors lined one wall, displaying camera feeds from various locations. I gasped as I recognized my apartment building on one screen, the Sovereign on another. You've been watching me, I whispered. Protecting you, he corrected, leading me toward a desk where a laptop sat open. This was recorded yesterday. He pressed a key, and a video began to play. A man I'd never seen before was speaking to Roberts, my manager at the Sovereign. Money changed hands. Then a photograph, my photograph, was shown. Roberts nodded, pointing toward the kitchen where I worked. Who is he? I asked. Anton Vaska. He works for the Petrov family, your father's former associates and my current competitors. The way Dominic said competitors made it clear the relationship was far more hostile. What do they want with me? Dominic closed the laptop, turning to face me fully. In the harsh light of the security monitors, the scar along his jaw looked more pronounced, a reminder of violence survived. Your father hid something before he died. Something the Petrovs have been searching for ever since. A ledger containing details of their operation, enough evidence to destroy them. They believe he entrusted it to you, perhaps disguised as something innocent. A book, a keepsake, a piece of jewelry. I thought of my meager possessions, nothing valuable, nothing mysterious. I don't have anything like that. Perhaps not knowingly, Dominic said. But Anton's presence means they're getting desperate. They've exhausted other options, so what happens now? I asked, suddenly exhausted by revelations and fear. Dominic's expression softened as he looked down at me, small and overwhelmed in his oversized jacket. Now, you stay here, where I can keep you safe. We find what your father hid, and then you decide what kind of life you want to live, with the full knowledge of who you are and where you came from. And if I refuse, if I walk out now, then I'll have you driven home, he said simply, and I'll do my best to protect you from a distance, as I've always done. But I can't guarantee your safety if you refuse my help. I studied his face, trying to see past the mask of the powerful crime lord to the man beneath. The man who had known my father, who had kept that photograph all these years. Why should I trust you? I asked, my voice barely audible. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. The touch was gentle, incongruous from hands capable of such violence. Because I loved your father like a brother, he said softly. Because I've watched over you since you were a child. Because despite what I am and what I've done, I have never lied to you, Elena, and I never will. In that moment, standing in the glow of surveillance monitors showing a world I no longer recognized, I made my decision. Not out of fear or coercion, but out of a desperate need to understand the truth about my past, and perhaps to secure my future. I'll stay, I said. But only until we find this ledger. And then I want my life back. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Satisfaction, relief, perhaps something more complex. Of course, he agreed. Your life is yours to direct. I'm merely offering protection while you need it. As he led me back toward the main house, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just made a deal with the devil. A devil who wore expensive suits, who looked at me with eyes that held secrets about my past, and who had orchestrated this moment perhaps years in advance. Yet beneath the fear and uncertainty, another emotion stirred, a flicker of belonging I hadn't felt since my parents died, as if I'd been wandering lost for years, and had finally, unexpectedly, found my way home. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, waking me from a restless sleep. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The bed was too soft, the sheets too silky against my skin. Then memory flooded back, Dominic Castellano, the revelations about my father, the decision to stay. I sat up, taking in my surroundings properly for the first time. The guest suite I'd been given was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and pale blue. Fresh flowers sat on a side table, their sweet scent permeating the air. Through French doors, I glimpsed a private balcony overlooking the gardens. My few belongings had been brought from my apartment during the night, my textbooks stacked neatly on the desk, my worn backpack hanging from a chair. The contrast between my threadbare possessions and the opulent room was jarring. A soft knock at the door made me pull the covers higher. Yes? A young woman entered carrying a tray. Good morning, Ms. Reyes. Mr. Castellano thought you might prefer breakfast in your room while you settle in. She set the tray on a small table by the window. Fresh clothes are in the wardrobe. Mr. Castellano would like to see you in his study at 10, if that's convenient. If that's convenient, as if I were a guest rather than a prisoner, albeit a well-treated one. Thank you, I said, for lack of a better response. When she'd gone, I slipped out of bed and padded to the wardrobe. Inside hung a selection of clothes in exactly my size, simple, elegant pieces that somehow matched my personal style, while being of far higher quality than anything I'd ever owned. I fingered the soft fabrics, caught between gratitude and unease at how thoroughly Dominic had studied my life. After a quick shower in the marble bathroom, complete with products I recognized as expensive from my time serving wealthy clients, I dressed in jeans and a soft sweater that felt like cashmere against my skin. I ate breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries still warm from the oven, the best coffee I'd ever tasted, while flipping through my father's journal. Most entries were mundane, detailing everyday concerns and joys. Pride in my early reading abilities, worries about bills, love for my mother. But scattered throughout were cryptic notes, references to D and business dealings left deliberately vague. It painted a picture of a man torn between two worlds, the legitimate life he was building, and the shadow existence he shared with Dominic. The last entry, dated just days before the crash, chilled me. D doesn't understand. There's no clean way out of this life. The Petrovs won't let the matter rest, not after what I've taken. If anything happens, Elena must be protected at all costs. The key is with her always, hidden in plain sight, where only she would think to look. I closed the journal, my fingers trembling. What key? What had my father hidden with me? At precisely 10 o'clock, I made my way downstairs, following the directions a staff member had provided. The house was even more impressive by daylight. Soaring ceilings, artwork I recognized from museum exhibitions, furnishings that whispered old money and refined taste. It wasn't gaudy or showy. Everything spoke of genuine quality and understated wealth. Security personnel were visible now, positioned discreetly throughout the house. They watched me with professional detachment as I passed, acknowledging me with slight nods. Not guards to keep me in, I realized, but to keep others out. Dominic's study was a large room with wood-paneled walls and a wall of windows overlooking the grounds. Books lined built-in shelves, and a massive desk dominated one end. He stood when I entered, setting aside what looked like financial reports. "Elena," he said, his voice warming, "did you sleep well?" He looked different in daylight, no less powerful, but more human somehow. He'd forgone a suit jacket, wearing just a crisp white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms marked with faint scars. The hard lines of his face seemed softened by the morning light. As well as can be expected, I answered honestly. I held up the journal. I've been reading. And? He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather armchairs positioned near a fireplace, taking the seat opposite. He mentions a key that's with me always. But I don't have anything like that. No key. Nothing of value that could hide something. Dominic leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Think, Elena. Did your father give you anything before he died? A toy? A piece of jewelry? A book? I shook my head. The accident happened while I was at school. I never got to say goodbye. Everything I have from them is just normal stuff. Photos, a few books, my mother's wedding ring. At the mention of the ring, something flickered in Dominic's eyes. What? I asked. Your mother's ring, he said carefully. Do you have it with you? No, it's at my apartment, in a jewelry box on my dresser. I twisted my hands in my lap. It's the only thing of real value that I have from them. I never wear it. I've always been too afraid of losing it. Dominic nodded thoughtfully. We should retrieve it. If Marco wanted to hide something valuable but ensure you kept it close, your mother's ring would be the perfect vessel. You think there's something hidden in my mother's ring? The idea seemed absurd, yet strangely plausible. It's worth investigating, he said, then tapped a button on the desk. Almost immediately, a door opened, and a man entered, tall, with a weathered face and watchful eyes. Victor, arranged to have Ms. Reyes's apartment searched. We're looking for a woman's ring, likely in a jewelry box on the dresser. Victor nodded once and left without speaking. You have people searching my home? I asked, anger flaring. For your protection, Dominic replied, unfazed by my reaction. The Petrovs may have already been there. The casual way he exerted control over my life was both infuriating and oddly reassuring. Someone was finally taking care of problems that had always been too big for me to handle alone. While we wait, Dominic continued, there's someone I'd like you to meet. He stood, offering his hand to help me up. Someone who knew your parents almost as well as I did. I allowed him to lead me through the house to what appeared to be a residential wing. The security presence was heavier here, with armed guards stationed at key points. Dominic nodded to them as we passed, his hand resting lightly at the small of my back, a gesture that was becoming familiar, its proprietary nature both unsettling and comforting. We stopped before a door guarded by two particularly imposing men. They stepped aside at Dominic's approach, one opening the door for us. The room beyond was bright and airy, set up as a combination sitting room and bedroom. Medical equipment lined one wall, and a nurse sat quietly in a corner, reading. In a hospital bed by the window lay an elderly man, thin and frail, his skin like parchment. Uncle Sal, Dominic said, his voice gentler than I'd heard it before. There's someone here I'd like you to meet. The old man turned, his movements painfully slow. His eyes, faded with age but still sharp, widened when they landed on me. Sweet Mother of God, he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. Marco's little girl. Dominic guided me closer. Elena, this is Salvatore Castellano, my father. The old man reached out a trembling hand, and I found myself taking it, feeling bones as delicate as a bird's beneath paper-thin skin. You look just like your mother, he said, tears gathering in his eyes. Beautiful Isabella, and you have Marco's eyes. I glanced at Dominic, uncertain. My father had a stroke 2 years ago, he explained quietly. He's been here under medical care since then. I'm dying, the old man said bluntly, with a wheezing laugh. No need to dress it up, Dominic. Cancer's eating me alive. His eyes remained fixed on me, but I lived long enough to see Marco's daughter grown. That's something. He tugged at my hand, pulling me closer. Your father was the best man I ever knew, he confided, his voice dropping as if sharing a secret. Better than me. Better than my son. Though Dominic tries. His eyes flicked briefly to Dominic, who showed no reaction to the assessment. Marco had lines he wouldn't cross. Principles. In our world, that's rare. Uncle Sal, Dominic interrupted gently. We're trying to find what Marco hid before he died. The item the Petrovs are looking for. Salvatore's expression darkened. Those Russian dogs. They never forgave Marco for what he took. He focused on me again. Your father stole something from them, evidence of their worst deeds. Insurance, he called it. Do you know where he might have hidden it? I asked. The old man shook his head, then was seized by a coughing fit. The nurse stepped forward with a glass of water, but Dominic waved her away, instead supporting his father himself with practiced ease, helping him drink. When the coughing subsided, Salvatore clutched at Dominic's sleeve. Keep her safe, my son. Marco entrusted her to us, to our family. I will, father, Dominic promised. And the way he said it, solemn, almost ritualistic, made it sound like an oath. The old man's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion claiming him. Dominic arranged him carefully against the pillows, with a tenderness I wouldn't have expected from those scarred hands. He'll sleep now, he said, guiding me from the room. The medications make him drowsy. Outside in the hallway, I leaned against the wall, overwhelmed by the encounter. He really knew my parents. They were like family, Dominic confirmed. Your father was his protege, like a second son. When Marco left the organization, it broke my father's heart. And you? I asked. Did it break your heart too when my father left? Something dark and painful crossed his face. It did more than break my heart, Elena. It destroyed a part of me I never got back. Before I could ask what he meant, Victor appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression grim. Sir, we have a problem. The apartment has been ransacked, thoroughly searched. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. The ring? Gone, Victor confirmed, along with most of her other possessions. Dominic's face hardened, a transformation so complete it was frightening to witness. The man who had tenderly cared for his father vanished, replaced by someone calculating and dangerous. Get the security feeds from the building, he ordered. Find out who did this and where they went. Already working on it, sir. There's something else. Victor hesitated, glancing at me. We found blood. Not much, but enough to suggest there was resistance. My neighbors? I asked, horrified. Mrs. Patel next door? Mr. Guzman across the hall? The building was quiet, Victor said. No signs of other disturbances. Dominic turned to me, his expression softening slightly. We'll find out what happened. In the meantime, you're staying here. The security protocols will be increased. The reality of my situation crashed down on me. They're really looking for me, aren't they? These people who knew my father. They are, Dominic confirmed, not sugarcoating the truth. And they won't stop until they find what they're looking for. A horrible thought occurred to me. My job at the Sovereign, people there know me, know my routine. I've already handled it, Dominic said. As far as the Sovereign is concerned, you've taken an extended leave of absence with full pay. He touched my shoulder lightly. Elena, I need you to trust me now. Let me do what your father asked of me. Let me protect you. Looking into his eyes, I saw determination and something more complex, a mixture of duty and personal investment that went beyond a promise to an old friend. I don't have much choice, do I? I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There are always choices, he replied. But some are wiser than others. A commotion at the end of the hallway drew our attention. Another security man was approaching rapidly, his hand pressed to an earpiece. Sir, perimeter breach at the north gate. 3 vehicles, heavily armed. Dominic's reaction was instantaneous. He pushed me against the wall, his body shielding mine as he drew a gun from beneath his shirt. Get my father to the panic room, he ordered. Victor, take Elena to the safe house. Now. Dominic, what's happening? I gasped, fear making my voice shake. They found you faster than I anticipated, he said grimly. He took my face between his hands, forcing me to focus on him. Listen to me carefully. Go with Victor. Do exactly as he says. I'll come for you when it's safe. But... Elena. His voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I promised your father I would keep you safe. I intend to keep that promise. Before I could respond, he pressed something cold and metal into my hand. A small handgun. Last resort, he said. Victor will protect you, but if something goes wrong, point and shoot. Don't hesitate. The weight of the weapon was terrifying in my palm, but I nodded, slipping it into my pocket. Dominic hesitated, then did something that shocked me more than the gun or the imminent danger. He leaned forward and pressed his lips to my forehead, a gesture so tender it seemed to come from someone else entirely. "Be safe," he whispered. Then he was gone, striding down the hallway, barking orders into a phone. Victor gripped my arm. "This way, Ms. Reyes. Quickly." I let myself be pulled along, through service corridors and down a flight of stairs I hadn't seen before. We emerged in an underground garage where a nondescript sedan waited, engine already running. "Get in the back," Victor instructed, opening the door. "Stay down." As I slid into the vehicle, the distant sound of gunfire reached my ears. My hands began to shake, the reality of my situation hitting me like a physical blow. This wasn't a movie or a book. This was my life now. Running from people who wanted something I didn't have, protected by a man whose world I barely understood. The car accelerated up a ramp and out into daylight. Through the tinted windows, I caught a glimpse of the mansion receding behind us, smoke rising from one wing. Men in tactical gear were exchanging fire with Dominic's security forces. And there, in the middle of it all, was Dominic himself, weapon drawn, directing his men with the calm authority of someone who had faced violence many times before. As if sensing my gaze, he turned, his eyes finding the departing car with unerring accuracy. Our gazes locked for just a moment before the car rounded a bend, cutting him from view. In that brief connection, I saw something in his expression that stayed with me as we sped away. Not just determination or duty, but a fierce, protective intensity that felt deeply personal. As Victor drove us away from the only safe place I'd known in years, I clutched the gun in my pocket and tried to make sense of how quickly my life had unraveled. In the space of a few days, I'd gone from anonymous server to the target of dangerous men, from a woman with no family to someone whose family history was written in blood and shadows, and somewhere at the center of it all was Dominic Castellano, a man I should fear, a man I barely knew, yet the only person standing between me and those who wished me harm. The safe house was a cabin nestled deep in the woods, about 2 hours outside the city. Simple but secure, with reinforced doors, shuttered windows, and surveillance cameras monitoring the perimeter. Victor installed me inside with brisk efficiency, showing me the panic room hidden behind a bookshelf, the emergency supplies, the communication system. "Mr. Castellano will contact us when it's safe," he said, checking his weapon. "Until then, we stay here and stay quiet." Hours stretched into an anxious evening. I paced the small living room, jumping at every creak and rustle from the surrounding forest. The gun Dominic had given me sat heavy in my pocket, a constant reminder of danger. "Has this happened before?" I finally asked Victor, who had maintained a watchful silence by the window. "Attacks on the mansion? Occasionally. The Petrovs have been growing bolder." His expression remained impassive. "But they've never gotten so close before. Someone gave them information. A traitor?" The concept seemed so melodramatic, like something from a movie rather than real life. Victor merely shrugged. "In our business, loyalty is bought and sold like any commodity. Our business. As if I were already part of Dominic's world rather than an outsider thrust into it." The casual inclusion unsettled me. Night fell, bringing a different kind of darkness to the forest. Victor maintained his position, occasionally checking the security feeds on a tablet. I tried to sleep on the small sofa, but managed only fitful dozing, my dreams filled with gunfire and Dominic's intense gaze. I was awakened just before dawn by the sound of a vehicle approaching. Victor was instantly alert, gun drawn. "Stay back," he ordered, positioning himself between me and the door. The security panel near the entrance chimed with an incoming code. Victor's posture relaxed slightly, but his weapon remained ready. The door opened, and Dominic stepped inside. My breath caught at the sight of him. A cut above his eye had been hastily bandaged. His once immaculate shirt was torn and stained with what looked horribly like blood, and he moved with the careful deliberation of someone hiding pain. "The house is secure," he told Victor. "Take the perimeter. I need to speak with Elena alone." Victor nodded and slipped outside without question, leaving us in sudden silence. Dominic's eyes found mine, something vulnerable flickering in their depths, before his careful mask slipped back into place. "Are you all right?" "Am I all right?" I repeated incredulously. "You look like you've been through a war." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Occupational hazard. I moved toward him without thinking, reaching for the bandage above his eye. You're hurt. He caught my hand, his grip gentle despite the tension radiating from him. It's nothing. It's not nothing, I insisted. Let me see. I have nursing training, remember? Something in his expression softened, and he allowed me to guide him to a chair. I found a first aid kit in the bathroom and returned to find him sitting exactly where I'd left him, his posture rigid with pain he wouldn't acknowledge. What happened? I asked, gently removing the bloodied bandage. The Petrovs brought more men than expected, he said, wincing slightly as I cleaned the wound. They were well informed about our security protocols. Victor mentioned a traitor. Dominic's eyes hardened, already handled. The clinical detachment in his voice sent a chill through me. This was the other side of Dominic Castellano, the ruthless enforcer who eliminated problems without hesitation. The wound isn't deep, I said, applying a fresh bandage. But you should have proper medical attention. Later, he dismissed. We have more pressing concerns. I stepped back, folding my arms across my chest. Like what? Like the fact that the Petrovs are desperate enough to launch a direct assault on my home. He leaned forward, his intensity drawing me in despite myself. They wouldn't take such a risk unless they were certain you had what they're looking for. But I don't, I protested. They believe you do, and that's what matters. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, a surprisingly human gesture from someone who always seemed so controlled. We need to find this ledger before they try again. Think, Elena. Think about what your father might have hidden with you. I sank onto the sofa, frustration and fear making my voice sharp. I've told you everything. The only valuable thing I had was my mother's ring. And that's gone now. Dominic went still, a peculiar expression crossing his face. Tell me about the ring. It was simple, I said, trying to visualize it. A gold band with a small diamond, nothing elaborate. Had you ever had it appraised? Cleaned by a jeweler? I shook my head. I couldn't afford that. I just kept it safe. He stood abruptly, pacing the small room. A ring would be too obvious. Marco was smarter than that. He stopped suddenly, turning to me. What else did he give you? Something personal? Something you'd keep close? I thought back to my childhood, to the blur of grief after the accident. There was a locket, I said slowly, memory surfacing. With their pictures inside. I wore it every day until the chain broke a few years ago. It's in the same jewelry box as the ring. So it's gone too, Dominic said, disappointment evident. No. I sat straighter, as realization dawned. No, I took it with me to work that day. The day you saw me at the Sovereign, the clasp was fixed, and I was going to wear it again. It should be in my locker at the restaurant. Dominic was already pulling out his phone. Victor, he barked when the call connected. The Sovereign, Elena's employee locker. There's a locket inside. Gold, with photos. Bring it here, now. He hung up and turned back to me, new energy in his movements despite his injuries. If your father hid something, that locket is the perfect place. Small, sentimental, always with you. But it's just a normal locket, I said. I've opened it hundreds of times to look at their pictures. Marco was clever. He wouldn't make it obvious. Dominic's expression softened. Elena, if we find this ledger, we can end this. The Petrovs will have no reason to come after you. And then what? I asked. The question that had been haunting me. What happens to me after this is over? He moved closer, his eyes intent on mine. That depends on you. What do you mean? You could go back to your life, finish your nursing degree, pretend none of this ever happened. He paused, something unspoken flickering in his expression. Or? I prompted when he didn't continue. Or you could accept your heritage. Take your rightful place. My rightful place? I repeated incredulous. In your organization? As what? A criminal? His jaw tightened at my tone. As a Reyes. Your father helped build what I have today. Half of this empire is rightfully yours. The offer stunned me into silence. Dominic watched me, his expression guarded yet somehow vulnerable, as if my answer mattered beyond the practical considerations of inheritance and legacies. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted finally. Everything I believed about my life, my parents. It's all been a lie. Not a lie, he corrected gently. a partial truth. Your parents loved you. They wanted to protect you from the reality of your father's life. He reached out, his fingers brushing mine with unexpected tenderness. You don't have to decide now, but know that you have options. You have a place with me, if you want it. The air between us seemed to thicken, charged with something more complex than our shared past or present danger. His proximity, the intensity of his gaze, made my pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The moment was broken by the sound of an approaching vehicle. Dominic moved swiftly to the window, gun appearing in his hand from somewhere beneath his ruined shirt. "It's Victor," he confirmed, relaxing slightly. Minutes later, Victor entered, holding a small velvet pouch. Found it exactly where she said. The locker wasn't even locked. Dominic took the pouch, emptying it into his palm. The gold locket gleamed in the early morning light. A simple oval pendant on a delicate chain. He handed it to me. "Open it," he instructed. With trembling fingers, I worked the tiny clasp. The locket opened to reveal what I expected. Tiny photographs of my parents, smiling at the camera, frozen in time. "There's nothing here," I said, disappointed. "Look closer," Dominic urged. "The frame, the backing." I examined the locket more carefully, running my fingernail along the edge where the photos were secured. To my surprise, the backing shifted slightly. "It's loose," I murmured, working at it until the metal disc popped free. Behind it was not empty space, but a tightly folded piece of microfilm. Dominic's breath caught. "That's it. That's what your father hid." Victor leaned in, equally intent. The Petrov ledger. With utmost care, Dominic extracted the microfilm, holding it up to the light. "Names, dates, accounts," he confirmed. "Everything the Petrovs didn't want exposed, their entire operation. So it's over?" I asked. "They'll leave me alone now?" Dominic's expression turned grim. "Not quite. They need to know we have it, and that copies exist in secure locations. Only then will they stand down. How do we do that? I arrange a meeting, show them what we have, make them understand that coming after you further would be against their interests." His tone was matter of fact, as if negotiating with murderous criminals was an everyday occurrence, which, for him, it probably was. "And you think they'll just agree after they attacked your home, after they came looking for me? The Petrovs are ruthless, but they're also practical businessmen," Dominic said. "Once they know the ledger could be released if anything happens to you, they'll consider you more valuable alive than dead." The clinical assessment of my worth made me shiver. "Make the arrangements," Dominic told Victor. "The usual neutral ground. Tonight." Victor nodded and stepped outside again, already on his phone. "You should rest," Dominic said, turning back to me. "Tonight will be difficult." "I'm not sure I can sleep," I admitted. "Try." His voice softened. "I'll be right here." Exhaustion suddenly overwhelmed me. The adrenaline of the past days, the emotional revelations, the constant fear, it all crashed down at once. I nodded mutely and retreated to the small bedroom. I must have fallen asleep almost immediately, because when I opened my eyes again, the light had changed. Late afternoon shadows stretched across the floor. I sat up, disoriented, and found Dominic sitting in a chair by the bed, watching me with an unreadable expression. "How long have you been there?" I asked, my voice husky with sleep. "A while." He didn't elaborate. Something had changed while I slept. His injuries had been properly treated, his ruined clothes replaced with fresh ones. But it was more than that. There was a new resolve in his bearing, a decision made. "What is it?" I asked. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've been thinking about your father, about the promise I made him." He paused. "And about how to end this situation permanently." "What do you mean, end it permanently?" I asked, fully awake now. Dominic's expression was resolute. "The Petrovs won't stop as long as they think there's a chance you know something they don't. Even with the ledger, they'll harbor doubts, resentments." His gaze held mine, unflinching. "The only way to truly protect you is to remove them as a threat entirely." A chill ran through me as I understood his meaning. You're planning to kill them. I'm planning to neutralize a threat that has existed for too long. He stood, pacing the small room. Their organization has been encroaching on my territory for years. They've threatened my people, corrupted officials I had secured, disrupted supply lines. He turned back to me. This isn't just about you, Elena, though you are a significant factor. The way he said it, with a hint of vulnerability beneath the calm exterior, made my heart beat faster. I can't be responsible for a gang war, I said shakily. You're not. This conflict has been brewing for years. Your father knew it, which is why he took precautions to protect you. Dominic approached the bed, sitting on the edge, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Tonight isn't just a negotiation. It's an opportunity to end the Petrov threat permanently. How? Federal agents will be in position, ready to move on my signal. The ledger provides enough evidence for RICO charges, money laundering, conspiracy. His mouth curved in a cold smile. I've been cultivating certain relationships within the Bureau for precisely this eventuality. You're working with the FBI? I couldn't hide my shock. But wouldn't they want to arrest you too? An interesting balancing act, isn't it? Dominic acknowledged. Let's just say there's an understanding about jurisdictional priorities. The Petrovs have become a bigger problem for the authorities than I am. I struggled to comprehend the layers of complexity in his world, a world where he could simultaneously be a criminal and collaborate with law enforcement. Nothing was black and white. Everything existed in shades of moral gray. What's my role in all this? I asked. You'll be there, he said simply. The Petrovs need to see you, to believe that you're the key to what they've been seeking. Your presence sells the narrative. Fear spiked through me. You want me to be bait. I want you to be safe, he corrected, his voice softening. Which is why you'll be wearing body armor, surrounded by my best security, and under my personal protection every second. His hand covered mine, warm and surprisingly gentle. I would never risk your safety, Elena. Not after everything your father sacrificed to protect you. I looked down at our hands, his scarred and strong, mine small and pale in comparison. You really cared about him, didn't you? He was my brother in all but blood, Dominic said quietly. His betrayal, leaving the organization, hurt me more than any injury I've sustained. But I understood it. He wanted a different life for you, and yet, here I am, I said bitterly. Right in the middle of everything he tried to shield me from. Sometimes fate has its own designs. Despite our best efforts, his fingers tightened around mine. But after tonight, you'll have choices, real choices without the shadow of the Petrovs hanging over you. And what if I choose to walk away? I asked, watching his face carefully. To go back to my ordinary life, my nursing ambitions. Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment, resignation, acceptance. Then I would respect your choice, he said finally, but I would still watch over you from a distance, as I promised your father. And if I didn't choose that, the question slipped out before I could stop it. Dominic went very still, his gaze intensifying. What are you asking, Elena? My heart hammered in my chest. If I decided to stay, to learn about my father's world, your world. The mask of control slipped, just for a moment, revealing raw emotion beneath. Then you would have a place by my side, not just because of your father or your inheritance, but because— He stopped abruptly. Because, I prompted, hardly daring to breathe. His hand moved to my face, cupping my cheek with unexpected tenderness. Because in the few days I've known you, really known you, not just watched over you, I've come to admire your strength, your resilience, your capacity to face impossible truths and still stand tall. The intensity in his eyes made me tremble. This dangerous, powerful man was looking at me as if I were something precious, something to be cherished rather than possessed. I don't know if I can be part of your world, I whispered. The violence, the danger. My world isn't only shadows, he said. There's also protection, family, loyalty, things your father valued before he chose another path. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I'm not asking you to decide now, just to keep your mind open to possibilities. A knock at the door broke the charged moment between us. Dominic withdrew his hand reluctantly, composing himself as Victor entered. It's time, sir. The meeting is set for 9 o'clock at the waterfront warehouse. Dominic nodded. Prepare the cars. Full security protocol. As Victor left, he turned back to me. Are you ready for this? No, I wanted to say. I'm not ready for any of this. Not the danger, not the revelations about my past, not these confusing feelings for a man who existed in a world so different from mine. Instead, I nodded. I'm ready. The warehouse loomed dark and imposing against the night sky, its windows broken and boarded, its metal sides rusted from years of exposure to salt air from the nearby harbor. Security teams had swept the building earlier, positioning snipers on adjacent rooftops and plainclothes agents among the dock workers. I sat in the back of an armored SUV, wearing a bulletproof vest beneath a dark sweater. Dominic sat beside me, calm and focused, dressed impeccably in a suit that concealed his own body armor. In the dim light, he looked dangerous and elegant, a predator in his element. Remember, he said, checking his weapon one final time. Stay behind me at all times. If anything goes wrong, Victor will get you out immediately. He handed me a small device. Emergency beacon. Press it if we get separated. I slipped it into my pocket, trying to control my trembling hands. Will the FBI really arrest them? As soon as the exchange is complete and they've seen the ledger. Dominic's confidence was unwavering. By morning, the Petrov organization will be dismantled. Victor opened the car door. They've arrived. 2 vehicles, Petrov and his lieutenants. Dominic nodded. Let's finish this. As we approached the warehouse, flanked by security, I felt strangely calm, as if I were watching myself from a distance, playing a role in someone else's story. The heavy metal door slid open, revealing a cavernous space illuminated by harsh industrial lights. In the center stood a group of men. Their leader, a silver-haired figure with cold eyes and an expensive overcoat, watched our approach with predatory intensity. Castellano? He greeted, his accent thick but his English precise. Finally, we meet in person, after so many years of competition. Petrov. Dominic's tone was neutral, but I sensed the tension coiled within him. I believe we have business to discuss. Petrov's gaze shifted to me, his expression calculating. So, this is Marco's daughter. You look like him, especially around the eyes. I fought the urge to step back, to hide behind Dominic. Instead, I met his stare evenly, channeling something of the strength Dominic had praised in me. We have what you've been searching for, Dominic said, drawing Petrov's attention back to himself. The ledger your organization has killed for, threatened for. Show me, Petrov demanded. Dominic nodded to Victor, who approached with a laptop. The microfilm has been digitized. See for yourself. As Petrov and his men crowded around the screen, Dominic positioned himself slightly in front of me, a living shield. I watched Petrov's face as he viewed the contents, his confidence faltering, then hardening into something ugly and desperate. You know what this means, Dominic continued. Evidence of every illicit transaction, every murder ordered, every official bribed. Enough to destroy your entire operation. What do you want? Petrov asked, his voice dangerously quiet. 2 things. First, you withdraw completely from my territories, the docks, the south side, the shipping routes. Dominic's voice was matter of fact, as if discussing a business merger rather than criminal empires. Second, Elena Reyes is untouchable. Any move against her, any threat, even any surveillance, and this ledger goes to every law enforcement agency in the country. Petrov's eyes narrowed. You ask too much, Castellano. I'm not asking, Dominic replied, his tone hardening. I'm telling you how this will be. The tension in the warehouse was palpable, electricity crackling in the air. Petrov's men shifted, hands moving toward concealed weapons. Dominic's security did the same. Perhaps we should negotiate more. Privately, Petrov suggested, gesturing toward a side office. Just you and me, Castellano. It was a trap. I knew it instinctively, could see it in the slight smirk that touched Petrov's mouth, the way his men subtly repositioned themselves. Dominic, I whispered urgently. He gave an imperceptible shake of his head, silencing me. Why not? He agreed. Victor, stay with Elena. As Dominic moved to follow Petrov toward the office, A subtle movement caught my eye, one of Petrov's men adjusting something beneath his jacket, the glint of metal. "Gun!" I shouted, just as all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Dominic dove toward me, knocking me to the ground and covering my body with his, as bullets ricocheted off concrete and metal. Victor pulled me behind a stack of crates, returning fire while Dominic engaged the nearest threat. Through the chaos, I heard shouting, saw figures in FBI jackets pouring in through side entrances. The raid had been triggered early by the gunfire. "Stay down," Dominic ordered, firing with deadly accuracy at Petrov's men. But through the smoke and confusion, I saw Petrov himself slipping away toward a back exit, a weapon in his hand. Without thinking, I pressed the emergency beacon in my pocket and followed, keeping low and using the chaos as cover. I couldn't let him escape, not after everything that had happened, not when he was the source of the danger that had upended my life. The back corridor was dimly lit and deserted. I moved cautiously, the gun Dominic had given me earlier now in my hand. Ahead, I heard a door open, saw a slice of night sky. "Stop!" I called, raising the weapon the way Dominic had taught me during our brief instruction. Petrov turned, surprise flashing across his face before it settled into contempt. "Marco's daughter," he sneered. "Coming to avenge Daddy? You've threatened me, invaded my home, endangered people I care about," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "It ends now." He laughed, a cold sound that echoed in the narrow space. "You won't shoot me, little girl. You don't have your father's killer instinct, or your lover's." "Dominic isn't my lover," I said automatically. Petrov's smile widened. "No? The way he looks at you says otherwise." The mighty Castellano, brought low by Marco's little girl. His expression hardened. "He'll get you killed, just like your father." "My father died in a car accident," I said, but doubt crept into my voice. "Is that what Castellano told you?" Petrov laughed again. "Your father died because he trusted the wrong person, because he believed Dominic would help him escape this life." My hands trembled on the gun. "You're lying. Ask him who was driving the car that night," Petrov taunted. "Ask him why your mother's body was found with a bullet wound that the police conveniently overlooked." "Shut up," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "Elena." Dominic's voice echoed down the corridor. "Elena, where are you?" Petrov raised his own weapon, pointing it past me. "Time to finish old business." I fired without conscious thought, the gun's recoil shocking me. Petrov staggered back, surprise replacing the sneer on his face as crimson bloomed across his expensive coat. He collapsed to his knees, then fell forward onto the concrete floor. Dominic reached me seconds later, taking in the scene with one sweeping glance. Without a word, he pried the gun from my rigid fingers and pulled me into his arms. "It's over," he murmured against my hair. "It's done." FBI agents swarmed the corridor, securing Petrov's body, clearing the area with professional efficiency. One nodded respectfully to Dominic, who returned the gesture without releasing me. "Get her out of here," the agent said quietly. "We'll handle the rest as discussed." Dominic guided me through a side exit, away from the chaos inside the warehouse. Outside, the night air was cold and clean against my tear-streaked face. I pulled away from him abruptly. "Did you kill my parents?" I asked, my voice breaking. He went completely still. "What?" Petrov said. "He said you were driving the car, that my mother had a bullet wound." The words felt like glass in my throat. "Was it you?" Pain and shock crossed his face, genuine, undisguised. "No," he said hoarsely. "Elena, no. I loved your father. I would never—" He stopped, struggling for words. "Petrov was lying, trying to turn you against me." "Then what really happened?" I demanded. "I need the truth, Dominic. All of it." He closed his eyes briefly, composing himself. When he opened them, there was a raw honesty there I hadn't seen before. "Your father called me the night before the accident. Said he had evidence against the Petrovs, that he needed my help to disappear, to take you and Isabella somewhere safe." Dominic's voice was low, haunted. "I agreed to meet him the next day, to make arrangements, but the Petrovs found out somehow. They sabotaged his car, cut the brake lines. And my mother's gunshot wound? She wasn't shot. he said firmly. The crash was violent. Glass, metal. The coroner might have mistaken a puncture wound for a bullet hole, but there was no shooting. I made sure of it. I saw the reports, paid for a second examination. I searched his face for any sign of deception, finding only grief and what looked like sincere regret. I should have helped him sooner, Dominic continued. Should have moved faster. By the time I reached out, it was too late. His hands clenched at his sides. It's the greatest failure of my life, Elena. Not being there when Marco needed me most. The ring of truth in his words, the raw emotion behind them, made something tight in my chest begin to loosen. You've been watching over me since then, I said, keeping your promise. At a distance, as he would have wanted. Dominic stepped closer, carefully, as if afraid I might run. But seeing you again, getting to know you, it's changed things, changed me. How? I asked, barely breathing. His hand rose to my face, fingers gently tracing my cheekbone. You remind me of what I once was, before this life hardened me, of the man your father believed I could be. He paused, vulnerability clear in his eyes. You make me want to be worthy of your trust. In that moment, with sirens wailing in the distance and the aftermath of violence all around us, I made my choice. Not out of fear or obligation, but out of a recognition of truth that resonated deep within me. I closed the distance between us, my hand finding his cheek as his had found mine. I believe you, I whispered. Relief washed over his face, followed by something deeper, more profound. Slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, he lowered his lips to mine. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, at odds with the dangerous man the world saw. Then, as I responded, it deepened into something hungry and desperate, as if we were both seeking absolution in each other's arms. When we finally parted, breathless, his forehead rested against mine. What happens now? I asked. Now, he said softly. We build something new, something your father would be proud of. His arms tightened around me. The legitimate businesses, the foundations, the community work, that all continues, grows stronger. The other aspects, we'll scale back, transition. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Because of me? I asked, skeptical that my presence could trigger such a transformation. Because it's time, he answered honestly. And yes, because of you. Because I want to be the man you deserve, not just the man circumstances made me. In the distance, the warehouse glowed with the lights of emergency vehicles. The Petrov threat had ended, not just for me, but for Dominic's organization, for the city itself. It won't be easy, I warned. I still have my nursing exams, my own goals. He smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. I wouldn't expect anything less. Your father was stubborn too. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining. We'll figure it out together. As Dominic led me toward the waiting car, I felt a strange sense of completion, of pieces long scattered finally coming together. The daughter of Marco Reyes and the man who had loved him like a brother. Perhaps this was always where my path was meant to lead. The future stretched before us, uncertain but full of possibility. Not the life my father had envisioned for me, perhaps, but one where I could honor his memory while forging my own way forward. With Dominic beside me, both protector and partner, I would navigate this new world. Not as a victim of circumstance, but as a woman claiming her rightful place. In the moonlight, Dominic's ring glinted on his hand as he opened the car door for me. One day, perhaps, my mother's ring would be found and returned. But I no longer needed it to feel connected to my past. The truth, painful as it was, had finally set me free. As we drove away from the warehouse, leaving behind the violence that had brought us together, Dominic's hand remained clasped with mine. A promise more binding than words, a future waiting to be written.